and that's always the thing. When you work with people who are also invested in it, then you can actually grow together, and you can feed back off of each other. And I found that extremely useful. It's just to get together with other people, try to think. Street photography is a really good idea. Rather than just going into town by yourself, get a little group of people together. And you can all hit the town, do some street photography, compare shots. Stop by a coffee shop or something, have a coffee, compare shots, compare notes, and learn that way. I've always found that, for me, that's always been really, for the most part, it's been really the source of my own improvement, was to communicate with other people.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think being around other people, and I love that you talk about that, like a model will suggest something and you're like, oh, I'll try it. Because I can tell you there are a lot of photographers that get offended when like somebody else, like the photo assistant or the model they're just like, don't tell me how to do things. I mean, obviously people can overstep. I'm not saying that, but like you're all there. And if you have a team that's so motivated that they're all into the shots, then as long as you keep it orderly, there's no reason why you can't listen to what they're saying. I mean, why not? Maybe they do know something. I mean, I'm totally open to trying stuff. I mean, that's just a great way to do it. And on to when you're talking about the street photography, something I did years ago, which I should really do again. Now maybe I'll do it 2024, is I used to get with groups of photographers and hang out. And then every once in a while, like twice a year, 3 times a year, we would do like a photo swap. So it basically, you take a picture you really like and you kind of swap with people, right? Everybody kind of puts it up to random, however you want to do it. And that's like a really fun way to do it, because you can kind of hang out as photographers and take some of somebody else's work, which is cool, and they're taking your work. But what's nice about that is it gives you a goal, right? It's like, oh, I want to create something really fun or a great picture that represents me for the photo swap, so that one of my friends can have it and maybe, possibly put it on their wall, or however they're going to do it, which I just think is a really great feeling, because maybe you're never going to put something in a gallery or whatever, but to know somebody appreciates your work well enough to take it and put it up somewhere is pretty important. So, just find some friends that are interested and say, and they don't even have to be local, because you could do, online printing where it just gets shipped to them, right? You don't even have to do it that way, but do some kind of photo swap a couple times a year with friends.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. Coming back to the modeling thing. So recently I did a workshop in the Lofoten Islands where we shot Northern Lights and Vikings. We had some Viking models with us. In northern Norway, in an Arctic landscape. So it's very cool, because it's as authentic as it'll always get, as far as the backdrop is concerned, because that was one of the sort of centers of Viking life 1,000 years ago, and the landscape hasn't really changed at all. I mean, you just you take a look around and it's like, well, okay, well that's what it looked like 1,000 years ago when the Vikings were actually around, and so you put a Viking model in front of that, and you just There's no need for AI anymore, because it's right there. We had 2 models on this workshop, and they were both professional historical models. So modeling as Vikings, modeling as knights in armor and stuff. That was their thing. On and off a horse, actually. Interesting enough. So we also had some horses there that we used for some of the shoots, we call them our Netflix Vikings, because that's what I do. So they're on shows like Vikings and Vikings Valhalla on Netflix.
Oh,
and
very cool.
So it's those kind of full armor, weaponry, like full regalia. Really very, very cool, very detailed. But the really interesting thing about that was that it was real teamwork. They were really up for. They had a lot of expertise in giving us like the Viking poses and all that kind of stuff. That was really cool. But they were also really open to trying out new things, because here we have a Viking, but we are in the 21st century, or well, almost the 21st century. If I think about the Lofoten Islands, pretty much the 21st century, But it was really interesting actually to do some things that were maybe a little bit out of the ordinary for what they used to be doing, and it was a really creative workflow. It was great. It's great to get all sorts of different shots that you didn't think you were going to get, it was just a really fantastic creative environment to shoot in.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
And then there were the Northern Lights. That's the other thing.
No, just to top it off. That sounds fantastic. And kind of on that note, and one of the first things I thought of when you told me the subject was, and this is something I think when people get a little more experience, they stop doing, but I think it's something we should all be doing, is help other photographers, your peers. Like, just go effectively as a photo assistant, if you want to put it that way. You're not shooting it. You're there to help them. You're listening to them. You're being hands for them. You're giving them, tips if they ask, whatever. You're part of the shoot, but you're not the photographer. You're just on the set. And I think that opens your eyes to more things because, we're on the set shooting, we can be very focused, right? Because we're shooting, right? So, but when you're there as an assistant, you are seeing everything. You're watching, you're over here. You're not seeing things that only the photographer sees. Like, I should say, there's things that the assistant sees the photographer doesn't see. And that's why I think you should be listening to people. But do that, like, step down. And I know a lot of people that they've got ego. They're like, I don't want to be seen as an assistant, but it's like, I'll help somebody. I would love to be on people's photo shoots. I love to see how they do it because everybody can teach you something. So if you are out there and you know other people, help them. Go on their shoots. Hopefully they'll help you too, right? That's also nice. And you will learn. I mean, you'll learn even if the person isn't, let's say, quite at your level. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily help somebody who doesn't know how to load their camera. I think everybody loads their camera these days. That's me being old there. Do people load cameras anymore? I just gave away my age. Where are we? Are we in the 21st century? I don't know. Yeah. So well, even if I wouldn't, if somebody just started, that wouldn't learn anything from that necessarily. But people that are at my level, maybe they haven't been published, but they're experienced and they're good. Help them. Why not? It can't hurt you.
Oh, absolutely. This, and it might just be a little thing, but virtually almost every time I come away from something like that thinking, I didn't know that thing. That's pretty clever. I'm going to do that from now on. And it might just be a little thing. This the countless, even just doing this podcast actually and talking to people. I've learned so many different things. And people often think like, oh man, talking to lots of photographers, that must have done you the world of good in terms of like your lighting technique and stuff. Probably true. But I tell you, some of the most useful things I've learned are little things. Like I remember having a conversation with Joel Grimes one time and he goes like, and I was complaining about my light like slipping, and he goes like, oh, I just take an angle grinder and I'll just cut in like a straight edge. And I'm like, yeah, why don't people do that? That's a really good idea. Fixed it. I do that to all of my stands now. That's it.
Yeah, it's put it right there. Nice. Yeah, and little things, right? It's funny because it's so many of those things that make up like the professional, if you will, right? That's where you step beyond just the person that does the stuff, right? Like you like building your own things, modifying things to work for you. Or when people do things, what I say is do things wrong, right? You go there and they're using something that's not a thing that's meant for, and you're like, hold on, why do you have that over there? And they're like, oh, it does this. You're like, it does? Hold on, what?
Yeah.
You get a note, it's like, I'll do that, because that's what people do, right? People find solutions. One of the most fun things that I used to do when I was actually in the actual store, like as the advisor at Adorable, was people would come in and they'd need to like rig something. And they'd be like, I have to do this shot. I have no idea how I'm going to get this light here or this camera here. And I'd be like, let me show you, and we'd be out there with all kinds of stuff. And it's just so fun because I had done so much of that. Early on, I worked for this photographer that did the advertising for cruise ships. And, you were shooting these huge ballrooms and stuff, and you can't put stands out. Everything's being like hidden, and this is over there, that's over there. And it's just, you learn to like be creative with how you put lights. And it really makes you think about, because you want to get them in a place where you can get a good picture, obviously, but also they can't be in the shot. So it's like, you can't just do the thing and put the softbox here, right? You gotta think about it. What are we going to use? How are we going to use grids? How are we going to use this? And because of that, you learn a lot. You understand like how things work. So I think that watching how people do things that do different things than you, like people used to, like, it was funny because I had a friend of mine when I was growing up, when I was a photo assistant, he only wanted to assist fashion photographers because we both wanted to do fashion. And I just took, mostly because I needed the money, I just took any work. I worked for food photographers. I worked for product photographers. I worked for just people who shot portraits. And man, I learned so much doing that. People that do other things that you don't do, they use equipment, they use techniques, they use the light different than you do, and you can bring that into your work. So maybe that's another way to grow, is to look at work that's not what you look at, right? It's, if you shoot portraits, look at landscapes or product photography. If you shoot product photography, look at, I don't know, food. Well, I guess food is product, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, then press here for the full episode in glorious Technicolor. Hey, and don't forget to subscribe.